everybody is misunderstanding Steven Spielberg's new Disclosure Day. And I think that's the point. So, look, my partner and I went to see it a few days after it opened. Matinee, big IMAX theater, and we kind of loved it. It was cute. We kept catching each other's eyes in the dark, these little knowing smiles, because we were watching the same movie. And I thought the mythology was brilliant. But then, by the time we left the theater, walked down to the lobby and started to hear the chatter from everybody else, I thought, gosh, I think some of us saw a very different movie than the rest. Same screen, same 2 hours-ish, almost like a different movie. Here's where it gets really interesting. This is what they were arguing about, things like plot holes. Why does the kid use a USB stick in the age of the cloud? I mean, didn't the internet exist? Or the CGI on the animals, it was soft. And okay, I admit that the animals are cute and fuzzy, but the CGI could have been more realistic, I guess. In fact, that's the thing. There was a big emphasis on realism. Like the getaway car. They're racing to get away, the tires are shot out, but then a scene or two later, the wheels are fine. I mean, I didn't notice that. I don't know how anybody noticed that. Or things like the script was sloppy. And, I've heard a lot of things about could have been edited some more. What about this line? Gosh, all this emphasis on the details, right? The details of the realism. And to be fair, if you're watching this wanting a realistic documentary movie that reflects reality, they're not wrong, right? It's all in there. But I want to pose a question here. Why are we interpreting this movie so literally? I mean, do we really think Disclosure Day is a documentary? I mean, it's not. Steven Spielberg, look, in an interview, he even said about when people complain about the disclosure at the end, it was so underwhelming. It was just bloop, a minute, or if that. He said, well, that was on purpose because it's not about that kind of disclosure. It's not about proving that there are ships or bodies in a hangar or little gray men in a mountain in New Mexico. He actually said that this movie is about us. And I would take that a step further, and I'd suggest that it's really a movie about the disclosure of what reality actually is. And honestly, I think if you really wanted real ET disclosure, that's the order of operations, right? If we want to make contact with extraterrestrials, whatever they might be, or they might look like, or they might, even exist non-physically, I think first we'd have to understand what we are, what reality is, and we'd have to understand this clearly enough to be able to understand other, right? Just imagine, what on earth? What in the world? Well, what could we possibly have in common with, beings that evolve in a completely different environment? I mean, I really think the understanding has to come first. It just has to, because everything else, it's like you're waiting for a package that you haven't built a house to receive it at yet. So I suggest this isn't a first contact movie about ETs. It might actually be a first contact movie about us and the nature of reality. So why is everybody tripping up over all the parts, these realistic details? Well, I think it's because we kind of forgot how to read and we forgot how to appreciate art, right? This movie, I assert, is a myth, and we're grading it like a documentary. So think about what we used to do with the old stories, right? Does anybody read the Odyssey and complain that the navigation's implausible? And certainly nobody fact checks a burning bush, right? I think we understand instinctively that those stories aren't reporting events, or at least I hope that's the case, but we understand that they're carrying a structure. Mythology isn't a worse version of journalism, right? It's not just primitive, and although I think some people might think that, mythology points at something that's too large to say directly. So it says it in an image, in a pattern, and it trusts that the part of you that can grasp the whole and see these things can catch what the literal mind would drop. And that's the whole trick. Myth speaks to the part of us that takes things in whole before they've been chopped into parts and analyzed and checked for errors. And in fact, that's kind of what all of these reviews of Disclosure Day I'm seeing look like. They look like bug reports. Like, here are all of the technical things wrong with the movie, right? And just missing the point. So when we count up all these plot holes, like, okay, even the fence. I have to admit, this surprised me when one of the protagonists, the main characters, I think Danny, he's sneaking behind the bad guys, but he's doing it so right in plain view behind a fence that's not really concealing him. I mean, that's when I knew that something was up, and this movie was more than it appeared, because I doubt that was an accident. Anyway, as soon as we're counting all these plot holes, we're doing something really poignant here, especially in the context of this movie. We're taking the one kind of object that can only be understood whole, like this mythology, and we're carefully, expertly even, taking it apart. We're seeing the trees without seeing the forest. And to make it worse, we're certain there's no forest because we've counted the trees so well. I suggest this movie is about a divided mind. One side that can see the parts, and one side that can see the whole. And what's funny is I bet the audience here is split right down the divide that this movie is about. I love this panel. Here we've got JJ and Desiree Hertog, and they caught something that I've seen very few people catch in their reviews of this movie. They looked at the two leads and said, wait a second, these two people map onto two aspects of the mind, or two halves of the brain. The young man carries the science, the structure, the mathematics, literally the left side, the analytical part of the brain and mind. And the woman, she carries not just the feeling and the sensing of others, but the ability to take something in whole, right? To see the whole person all at once, or the whole idea, whatever it is. And I think this is absolutely right. And I really want to give them credit because they're reading this film as a myth, when most of the internet, actually pretty much all the other reviews, and I've been fascinated by this, so I've watched a lot in the last couple weeks, when most of YouTube is reading it like a bug report. They even clock the names, and this isn't even something that I noticed, right? The names, like Margaret Fairchild. Gosh, that's Margaret Fairchild, right? That's not just a random name. I mean, that's a label. The film is kind of flagging here what it's doing, if you're willing to see it for what it is. And okay, so let's follow this this thread here, the masculine, feminine, left brain, right brain thread here, because I think this movie is really about these two leads. It's not about disclosure. It's about these two leads, which means it's actually about a divided mind trying to become whole. I mean, just look at how they're drawn. The young man, he speaks pure mathematics. Like they say, he's prodigious with numbers, right? He's drawing equations on napkins. He dropped out of college. He's self-taught. Here's a kid who hears the native language of the universe, but he can barely hold a human conversation. At least that was my impression. And the young woman, she's got the opposite gift. She sees into people. She understands them from the inside, right? The same way you walk into a room and you just know what's going on, that something's wrong before a word is spoken. So again, the Hertogs read that as masculine and feminine, even sides of a divided brain. And that's really interesting. And we can even invoke Ian McGilchrist here, right? Oh my gosh. McGilchrist spent 2, really 3, if you count them that way, enormous books on this situation, right? We have 2 ways of attending to the world, 2 modes of attention. One maps the parts, right? Number, logic, the thing you can take apart and measure. The other grasps the entirety, the whole, the person, the pattern. As soon as you break it into pieces, you miss it. You just don't see it, right? Because you've broken it into parts. And a key part of McGilchrist's thesis is that these 2 parts of the mind or the brain, they're barely on speaking terms, right? They don't coordinate. Now let's take a little aside here on when I talk about math, right? Because I want to be clear, because you might be thinking about the chalkboard and equations and boringness. And I just want to assure you, I'm not talking about the math you were taught in school, not the procedural math, not the number of apples or a train moving at this velocity and what time such stuff will happen, right? Not that. We're talking more about, think of good old Pythagoras, right? All is number. And what he meant by that was like all is relationship, proportion, the way things stand to each other. And the idea is that reality really is all about relations. Maybe no discrete things, but things about things in relation. In this context, reality isn't, so we're not using math to describe reality, not like a layer we layer on top of it and say, now we see how it works. But really, we're saying that reality is made of relations, and those relations are mathematical. And so math is what the reality looks like if you read it directly. I agree. It's a pretty wild idea, and it takes a little internalizing. So anyway, when the young man hears the language of the universe, and they literally say this, I think that's one of the truest things in the movie. Not because it doesn't mean that aliens would teach us their numbers, but think about it. Like if we're going to interact and contact ETs, what on earth would we have in common? Like we talked about this before. One thing we definitely have in common is we would have arrived at the same prime numbers. We'd all share the same pi. You know, mathematics in this sense is discovered, and so this would be something common that we would all arrive on. And so I think it's natural to assume that this is a necessary ability and skill. I can think of order of operations in math. You got to do this. You do this before you do this. Otherwise, it doesn't compute at all. I think that's what we're facing here. And then we have the young woman, Margaret Fairchild. And here's another really clever spin. Like on the outside, her gift looks like a psychic power, right? She can read people and she feels what they feel, and then she can almost like manipulate them somehow because she can read their minds. Certainly telepathy is possible. That's something that maybe we'll explore in some future videos. But I'd read this part of the story differently. I suggest that real love, right, the kind that's really worth the word, isn't just a mood or a feeling that comes and goes, but it's more like, in my book, The Quantified Soul, for example, I define unconditional love as kind of like a refusal to stop trying to understand someone or something, to never let fear or ego or our own discomfort get in the way of actually seeing them or the idea. And that's more than a feeling, that's a discipline, right? It's something that you have to really train yourself and empower yourself to do. And I think it might be potentially the most demanding pattern recognition there is, right? To see clearly, to see wholly without being distracted by either our own or somebody else's distortions. So I don't think she's really reading minds. It's more like she's reading the structure of a person the way he reads the analytic structure of a proof. It's kind of like the same faculty, just pointed in two different directions. So this isn't two people falling in love. I think we read this mythologically as one mind trying to become whole. Now let's push this one step further, because this is a thought I had after the movie that I actually hadn't considered before. We talk about the veil, right? Maya, the grand illusion that hides reality from us. And it seems like every tradition has a version of this, right? Something is between us and the truth. And the great spiritual task is to see past it. Well, what if the veil is this divide? What if the thing standing between us and understanding reality, as it actually is, isn't really a lack of some psychic gift? And maybe it isn't some special frequency we can tune to. And I doubt it's, a secret locked in some government door. But what if it's just that we've been running on the half of the brain and mind that takes things apart, and we've neglected the part of us that sees the whole? I think this actually really breaks the genre's expectation. Right? If you lift the veil, what's going to be behind it isn't mysterious. I don't think it's even something that you can see with your senses. And now, to be fair, yes, there exist different planes of reality. I've certainly done my share of astral travel and so on. But you know what? That's still Maya. If you see beyond Maya, what do you think you find? Well, I suggest you're going to find a lawful, structural, mathematical truth. Really the most rational thing there can be. Because frankly, if, behind the scenes, reality wasn't rational, if things didn't fit together and work as a system, how would it even fit together? I love this. Here, the panel is asking a really good question. Why now? Why would disclosure be happening in this moment? Well, their answer is that something out there is calling us up, right? They see that we're in trouble, planet's in crisis, and ETs have decided that it's time to come into the cavalry and save us. So I would turn that around, right? I think the crisis is a symptom, right? It's a symptom of our negligence to do the work, right? We have, in Ian McGilchrist's terms, we've let our limited local thinking, analytic mind to run the show. We're missing the big picture. But also here, I want to invoke another mythology. Check this out. Do you remember this from Star Trek? Right, when, oh gosh, I forgot his name. The engineer and inventor. He invents warp technology, breaks the warp barrier, and that's the moment. Well, I'd suggest that first contact, if there's going to be a first contact with extraterrestrial intelligence, I doubt it's going to happen because we built a faster engine. I mean, kind of so what? I suggest it's going to happen when we demonstrate proof that we can operate without tearing ourselves apart. Because look who shows up. It's not conquerors, it's not saviors, it's not the cavalry, but the Vulcans, the most rational species in the whole story, in the whole Federation. This is a people that's built their whole culture on governing their own internal storms and emotions instead of being run by them. And I've always thought this was an interesting clue. You kind of meet the rational ones first, because what if reason is the entrance exam? Not intelligence. I mean, there's lots of probably smart people and smart races, not technology. I mean, gosh, we've got a lot of powerful people with technology, with great technology today, but do we consider them the best of our species? I think this is really pointing at self-governance, the ability for us to hold our own chaos without being ruled by it, and for us to do this together. So I suggest that the thing between us and this larger stage, if there is a federation of planets out there that we're going to join, I think what's missing isn't a missing gift, right? Isn't some psychic powers, although those might be side effects of the journey. But I think it's much, much simpler and much, much harder. We're just not thinking clearly, and we're not thinking together. All right, in the film, here we have the animals that I guess everybody was disappointed with the CGI. So in the film, this cosmic ET intelligence keeps showing up wearing something familiar, right? In this case, it's fuzzy animals, right? Shapes we already trust. Although, if I saw a moose or deer in my bedroom, I don't know if I'd be comfortable. That would be pretty weird. Anyway, the easy reading is that it's softening the blow so we don't panic. And I think that reading is kind of right? It's giving us something that we can relate to and makes us comfortable. But I think there's actually something deeper underneath. The common telling is that it's ETs, and they're just sort of masking themselves as things we're comfortable with. But I think there's a bigger picture. Let's think about how throughout history, this kind of encounter experience keeps changing shape. Because it hasn't just been ETs today. In one age, the visitors were gods on a mountain. In another, they're angels. We've even had, in folklore, the fairies, right, who would take you in the night, slow your time, and you return changed. Does that sound familiar? And then, look, at some point we build aircraft and start writing science fiction, and we have the same kinds of reports in a new costume. Right? It's extraterrestrials, it's the grays, it's examination tables. And it's all still the same abduction story, really. The shape of it hasn't changed, but the cast and the costumes have changed. This kind of encounter seems to get dressed in whatever the age thinks is appropriate, right? Whatever the culture has on hand to make a sense of something that it can't yet hold directly. It'll reach for that. And then the experience comes back wearing that, right? This outfit updates every century, but the understanding, well, the thing underneath doesn't. So I suggest we've been receiving the signal the whole time. We just keep arguing about the outfit and how it presents itself. Oh yeah, there's also the device. The thing that the villain, I don't know if he really wants it, but he definitely doesn't want to lose them. This little handheld device, it looks like a crystal almost, something like that. It supposedly can turn a person into a channel, into an antenna, into a weapon, right? It really just becomes like an amplifier of your will. Now, frankly, and a lot of people have critiqued this for being a MacGuffin or like the magic wand in Harry Potter, just really a lame literary device. But I think if you strip the science fiction off of it, we have potentially one of the oldest ideas there is, right? The magician's instrument is the thing that focuses your will into effect. And really, every tradition has had a version of this, right? The wand, the staff, the ritual object that's supposed to bend the world to our intention. But what's fascinating here, and I think this is subtle, but also important, watch what the film does with it. The villain, sort of the leader of this, of Wardex, right? The non-government organization or company here that's hiding these secrets. He wants to ultimately grab that power and exempt himself from the rules he's put on everybody else. He gets to wield it. You get to be wielded. Or we get to be wielded. And I think the film codes that correctly as the actual evil in the story. Not the aliens, not the secrecy, the exemption from the rules. And for me, this is a rule I won't bend. And it's a major safeguard in my own book, The Quantified Soul. Because any framework that exempts somebody, whether it's the wielder or the watchers or the ones who supposedly know the secrets, as soon as somebody is exempt from the constraints that are placed on everybody else, the system is just incoherent on its own terms. The structure has to include the person using it. Because the moment you exempt yourself, that understanding you thought you had just turns into authority, inappropriate authority. Oh, I love this part, and I think the panel is dead right. They're saying here that disclosure shouldn't be informational, right? True disclosure would be transformational. If it's just more data, if it's a fact, right? Pretty pictures, well, maybe not so pretty, body on a table, a ship in a hangar. What does it change? I mean, sure, it has an effect, right? Knowing that we're not alone in the universe isn't nothing, and I want to take that seriously. But I think the whole disclosure conversation seems to be about this one big assumption: they're lying to us, and we have a right to the truth. And I think that feeling is legitimate. We've been condescended to, but let's think about what we're actually asking for, right? A cover-up assumes that the secret is a fact, something you could hand over in a file in an afternoon. But if the real secret here is the nature of reality, right? How mind and math and matter all fit together, then it was never going to be that kind of thing. You can't leak an understanding. There's no document or fact to be disclosed, because an understanding you have to build in yourself by doing the work. Which is why I think this knowledge has always looked like a secret. Not mostly because somebody was hoarding it. I mean, that has happened. But really, when you study this long enough, you start to see that certain knowledge can be destabilizing to a mind that hasn't built the structure to hold it. If you hand somebody the conclusion without all the scaffolding, you don't enlighten them, you fragment them, and sometimes you lose them to delusion. And really, the old traditions gated the material in stages. And yes, this seems like gatekeeping. And sometimes, sure, that may have been like a priesthood guarding it and maybe even hoarding it. But more often than not, I think of it as a load limit. Not a velvet rope, but a safety precaution. Because the gate was never moral. It's not that some of us are worthy and the rest of us aren't. It's just that this kind of understanding takes a kind of a coherence and ability to carry. And that kind of coherence is built, not granted. Nobody's gifted it, but anybody can do the work. The thing is, almost nobody does because it's genuinely hard, and there's no shortcut that doesn't just leave you, with like a slogan and some platitudes. So I'd say about these secrets that the door isn't locked, it's just heavy. And those are two different problems. So what if it is time for disclosure, but it's not about a leak. It's time for us building knowledge and understanding and abilities. And so you have to wonder, what would a real disclosure look like? Would it be some facts about some ETs in a hangar? Or would it be some representation of knowledge that we can learn from and apply in our lives? And finally, people keep tripping over this thing at the end, right? And the actual disclosure event, the moment that the world finally finds out about ETs, is short. It's almost like a throwaway. And all these critics on the internet have read that as a failure of nerve. Like, Steven Spielberg flinched at the end and didn't go through with it. But again, I think we talked about this earlier, Spielberg has been pretty clear that this was deliberate. The reveal is short because the big reveal, was never the point. He even named the feeling that he was after: ontological shock. What happens when your model of reality shatters against a new reality? He did say he wanted to keep, he said he wanted, I think, the ending to end with people clapping their hands right in front of your face, like, wake up. And I think that's really cool. There was actually a scene like that. They worked that in elsewhere. It would have been a cool ending, like, just, come on, people, wake up. So all that said, the disclosure I care about isn't information arriving from a ship or beamed into our minds from ETs, but it's really about the half of the mind that we've benched coming back online and integrating with the rest. So here's where I land on all this. We've been staring at the sky, waiting for the cavalry for a long time, waiting for a ship, a savior, a council of cosmic parents to lean down on us and tell us it's finally time and give us the answers. We've been waiting to be handed the thing that we can actually only build. Oh, and I've got one more thing on this movie, and I think it's the most meta thing about this whole film. So think about what we've just covered, right? A movie about needing a new way of thinking. A movie about a mind divided against itself. And look, half the audience seems to have watched it with the left brain, just picking apart all the details. And the other half seem to really get a bigger picture. I think this is just absolutely genius, right? The audience has proved the thesis on their way out of the theater. So personally, I really hope that Spielberg intended this. If he did, to me, it's a masterpiece. Just so timely, aligned with big ideas in the zeitgeist today, like Ian McGilchrist and many others. But frankly, I think the best artists don't seem to need you to catch it. They might leave that fence see-through, secure in what's underneath, and let you find it or not. Right? They've done their part. They've made their art. So either way, though, to me, this was a great movie.